in the depths of space where alien civilizations span millennia and technology can reshape reality itself, there exists a truth that would shake the foundations of the Galactic Council. Humans were never meant to be considered a minor species. For 300 years, humanity has been relegated to the Outer Rim territories, serving as laborers, miners, and foot soldiers in conflicts they barely understand. The galaxy's major powers, the crystalline Zephyrians, the hive-minded Nixari, and the energy-based Luminal Collective, have maintained their dominance through advanced technology and ancient knowledge, viewing humans as useful but unremarkable newcomers to the cosmic stage. But what if everything the galaxy believed about human history was a carefully constructed lie? What if the most devastating war in galactic history, the Void War that nearly destroyed all sentient life 2 millennia ago, had been won not by the combined might of the elder races, but by a single human garrison that was then erased from all official records? When Sergeant Marcus Chen arrives at Outpost Kepler 7, a forgotten research station on the edge of nowhere, he expects another routine assignment protecting xenoarchaeologists from space pirates. What he discovers instead will force him to question everything he knows about his own species and ignite a chain of events that will either elevate humanity to its rightful place among the stars or see them hunted to extinction by those who fear the truth. The war archives don't lie, and some secrets are too dangerous to stay buried. Marcus Chen's boots echoed against the metal deck plating as he walked through the cramped corridors of the transport vessel. The artificial gravity felt slightly off, making each step feel like he was walking through thick mud. Around him, other passengers, mostly traders, researchers, and the occasional bounty hunter, minded their own business in the way that people do when they're traveling to the Outer Rim territories. Places where questions weren't asked and backgrounds weren't checked too closely. The viewports showed nothing but empty space and distant stars. Out here, 3 weeks from the nearest inhabited system, even the most advanced alien civilizations seemed small and insignificant. Marcus preferred it that way. Less politics, fewer alien diplomats looking down their various appendages at humans, and definitely fewer reminders of humanity's place at the bottom of the galactic food chain. His new assignment papers crinkled in his jacket pocket as he shifted position. Outpost, Kepler 7. Security detail for a xenoarchaeology research team. Standard rotation, 18 months, decent pay. The kind of job that kept a soldier busy without asking too much of him. After 15 years in the human colonial defense force, Marcus had learned to appreciate the quiet assignments. The transport's captain announced their approach to the Kepler system over the intercom, his voice carrying the tired professionalism of someone who had made this run too many times. Marcus gathered his gear bag and made his way to the docking bay. Through the reinforced windows, he could see Outpost Kepler 7 growing larger ahead of them. The station was bigger than he had expected. Built into the side of a massive asteroid, its metal structures extended outward like the branches of some mechanical tree. Docking arms reached out to embrace incoming ships, while communication arrays and sensor dishes created a crown of technology around the rocky surface. Running lights traced patterns across the hull, giving the whole structure an almost organic quality in the darkness of space. The docking procedure was smooth, if unremarkable. Marcus felt the familiar vibration through the deck as the magnetic clamps engaged and the airlock cycled. He was one of only 3 passengers disembarking at Kepler 7. The others were an Nixari trader whose chitinous shell clicked as it moved, and a nervous-looking human woman clutching a datapad filled with research notes. The airlock opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure, and Marcus stepped onto the station. The first thing that hit him was the smell, recycled air with undertones of metal polish, and something else he couldn't quite identify, something old. The artificial gravity here was set to Earth normal, a small courtesy that many Outer Rim stations didn't bother with. A tall woman in researcher's clothing approached him, extending her hand in greeting. She was perhaps 40 years old, with graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and the kind of intense eyes that Marcus associated with people who spent their lives asking difficult questions. Sergeant Chen, I presume? I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez, project coordinator for the Archaeological Survey. Welcome to Kepler A7. Her handshake was firm, and Marcus noticed the calluses on her palms. This wasn't some soft academic who spent all her time in climate-controlled laboratories. Ma'am, reporting for duty as assigned. Marcus fell into the comfortable formality of military procedure. It was easier than trying to navigate the complex social dynamics that seemed to surround every civilian operation he had ever been assigned to. Dr. Guerre, Vasquez led him through the station's main corridors. The design was purely functional, wide passages with good sightlines, multiple emergency exits, and sturdy construction that could withstand the occasional micrometeorite impact or structural failure. But as they walked deeper into the complex, Marcus began to notice details that seemed out of place. The walls were covered in a material he didn't recognize. It looked like metal, but it seemed to absorb light rather than reflecting it. And the corridors were wider than they needed to be for human use. At least half again as wide as standard construction protocols called for. Most strange of all, there were symbols carved into the wall panels at regular intervals. They weren't human writing, but they weren't any alien script Marcus had encountered in his 15 years of service either. "Doctor, can I ask how long this station has been operational?" Marcus tried to keep his question casual, but something about the place was setting off every instinct he had developed during his military career. "That's an interesting question, Sergeant. The current human research operation has been here for about 6 months, but the station itself is much older. We're not entirely sure who built it originally, which is part of what makes this site so fascinating from an archaeological standpoint." They passed through a security checkpoint staffed by 2 bored-looking guards. Both were human, which was somewhat unusual for Outer Rim operations. Most stations this far out employed mixed security teams to take advantage of different species' natural abilities. The guards nodded to Dr. Bard. Vasquez waved them through without checking Marcus's identification too closely. "The previous inhabitants left behind some very interesting artifacts. Dr. Vasquez continued as they walked. "Weapon designs that are far more advanced than anything in current galactic databases. Energy manipulation techniques that our best physicists can't fully understand. And most intriguing of all, evidence of contact with species that aren't mentioned in any official galactic records." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's climate control. What kind of evidence? Before Dr. Vasquez could answer, they were interrupted by the sound of running footsteps. A young man in research clothing came skidding around a corner, nearly colliding with them in his haste. His eyes were wide with excitement, and he was clutching a datapad like his life depended on it. "Dr. Vasquez, you need to see this immediately. We found something in the deep archives. Something incredible." The young researcher paused, seeming to notice Marcus for the first time. "Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were with someone. This is Sergeant Chen, our new security chief. What's got you so excited?"
David looked uncertain, glancing between Dr.
Vasquez and Marcus. "Maybe we should discuss this privately. It's about the classified materials we've been finding in the sealed sections." Dr. Vasquez waved dismissively. "Sergeant Chen has appropriate security clearance, and he's going to be working closely with the team. Go ahead." David took a deep breath, consulting his data pad. "We've been working on decrypting the files we found in what we think was the station's command center. Most of it is in languages we can't read, but there are sections in what appears to be an archaic form of standard galactic. And, Dr. Vasquez, the dates on these files go back over 2,000 years. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. 2,000 years ago put these files right in the middle of the Void War period. Every schoolchild in the galaxy learned about the Void War in basic history classes. It was the conflict that had nearly destroyed all sentient life, ended only when the combined fleets of the elder races managed to seal away whatever force had been consuming entire star systems." "What kind of files, David?" Vasquez's voice had taken on the carefully controlled tone of someone trying not to get too excited about a potentially groundbreaking discovery. "Military records, battle reports, personnel files." David's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "And, Dr. Vasquez, according to these records, this wasn't just any military installation. This was a human military installation. A garrison that was apparently fighting in the Void War." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus knew enough galactic history to understand the implications of what David was suggesting. According to every official record, humans hadn't achieved faster-than-light travel until about 400 years ago. The species that fought in the Void War were the ancient powers, races that had been traveling between stars for tens of thousands of years. "That's impossible," Marcus said quietly. "Humans weren't even spacefaring during the Void War." David looked at his datapad again, then back at Dr. Vasquez.
"That's what I thought too, Sergeant. But these files are very detailed, and they appear to be authentic."
They describe human soldiers fighting alongside weapons and technology that make our current military equipment look like children's toys. And there's more. He tapped his datapad several times, bringing up what appeared to be a personnel roster. According to these records, the garrison stationed here wasn't just participating in the Void War. They were leading the final offensive that ended it. Dr. Vasquez reached out and took the datapad, scrolling through the information with increasing amazement. David, this is extraordinary. If these records are genuine, they would completely rewrite our understanding of human history, and galactic history as well. Marcus looked over her shoulder at the datapad screen. The text was in Standard Galactic, though it was an archaic form that made it difficult to read, but certain words stood out clearly. Human. Garrison. Victory, final offensive. And at the bottom of what appeared to be a battle report, a single line that made his blood run cold. Enemy forces completely eliminated. Void entity sealed. All evidence of human involvement to be classified at highest levels per Galactic Council directive. Doctor, Marcus said slowly, I think we need to see these archives. All of them. Dr. Vasquez nodded, handing the datapad back to David. Agreed. David, I want you to gather the rest of the research team. Tell them to drop whatever they're working on and focus entirely on the archived materials. And David, this information doesn't leave this station. Not until we understand what we're dealing with. As they continued through the station's corridors, Marcus found himself paying closer attention to the architectural details around them. Now that he knew what to look for, the signs were everywhere. The corridors weren't just wider than necessary for human use. They were designed for humans carrying military equipment. The symbols on the walls weren't decorative elements. They were tactical markings, faded with age but still recognizable to anyone with military training. This wasn't an abandoned research station that humans had converted for their own use. This was a human military installation that had been built during one of the most important conflicts in galactic history. And according to the records they had found, it had been deliberately hidden from the historical record. Vasquez led him through several more corridors before they reached what she called the archive chamber. The room beyond the heavy blast doors was enormous, easily large enough to hold several hundred people. Banks of storage devices lined the walls, their surfaces covered in the same light-absorbing material as the corridor walls. Most were dark and inactive, but several showed the steady glow of systems that were still operational after 2 millennia. We've only been able to access about 10% of the stored data so far, Dr. Vasquez explained as they entered the chamber. The encryption is incredibly sophisticated, and much of it appears to require authorization codes that we simply don't have. But what we've found so far suggests that this installation was far more important than we initially realized. Marcus walked between the storage banks, noting the military-grade construction and the subtle defensive positions built into the room's design. Whoever had built this place had expected trouble, and they had prepared accordingly. Doctor, has anyone attempted to contact Galactic Council authorities about these discoveries? Not yet. To be honest, Sergeant, we're not sure how they would react to evidence that contradicts the official historical records so dramatically. The political implications are enormous. That was an understatement. If humans had actually played a crucial role in ending the Void War, then their current status as a minor species was based on a deliberate deception. The question was who had benefited from that deception, and what they might be willing to do to maintain it. As if summoned by his thoughts, the chamber's communication system activated with a soft chime. Dr. Core. Vasquez moved to answer the call, and Marcus could see her expression change as she listened to whoever was speaking on the other end. Yes, I understand. No, we weren't expecting any visitors. How long until they arrive? She paused, listening intently. Very well. Please inform me immediately when they dock. She closed the communication channel and turned to Marcus with a worried expression. We have a problem, Sergeant. A ship just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. According to their transponder codes, it's a Galactic Council inspection vessel. They're requesting permission to board for what they're calling a routine administrative review. Marcus felt every combat instinct he had ever developed suddenly come to full alert. In 15 years of military service, he had never encountered a routine administrative review that involved unannounced visits to Outer Rim research stations. Doctor, I need to ask you a very important question, and I need you to answer it honestly. Has anyone outside of your research team been informed about the archive discoveries? Dr. Vasquez shook her head. No one. We've been very careful about communication security. Then this isn't a coincidence. Marcus began moving toward the chamber's exit, his mind already shifting into tactical planning mode. Someone knows we've found something important, and they're coming to make sure it stays hidden. As they left the archive chamber, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The station's corridors, which had seemed merely unusual before, now felt actively threatening. Every shadow could conceal a sensor. Every junction could hide an ambush point. Doctor, how many people are currently on this station? 40 to 3. Total. 37 researchers and support staff, plus 6 security personnel, including yourself. What kind of defensive capabilities does the station have? Vasquez looks surprised by the question. Defensive capabilities? Sergeant, this is a research station. We have basic shields to protect against debris impacts and radiation, but nothing that could stand up to a military assault. Marcus nodded grimly. If the Galactic Council inspection vessel was what he suspected it was, then basic shields wouldn't be nearly enough. Doctor, I strongly recommend that you begin an immediate backup of all archive data. If we're right about what's coming, we may not have much time. The communication system activated again, this time broadcasting throughout the entire station. The voice that emerged from the speakers was calm, professional, and utterly without emotion. Attention, Outpost Kepler. 7. This is Galactic Council Vessel Arbitrator requesting immediate docking clearance for administrative inspection. Please prepare all personnel files and research data for review. This is a mandatory compliance inspection authorized under Galactic Council Security Directive 2847. Marcus had never heard of Galactic Council Security Directive 2847, but the tone of the announcement told him everything he needed to know. This wasn't an inspection. It was a cleanup operation. As they hurried through the station's corridors, Marcus began to understand the true magnitude of what they had discovered. The archives didn't just contain evidence of human involvement in the Void War. They contained proof that the entire structure of galactic civilization was built on a lie, and there were clearly people willing to kill to keep that lie intact. The question now was whether a single human soldier and a handful of researchers could survive long enough to expose the truth. Marcus had faced overwhelming odds before, but never while protecting information that could reshape the galaxy's understanding of itself. As the arbitrator drew closer to docking range, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He activated his personal communication device and began recording a message that he would transmit to every human military installation in the sector. This is Sergeant Marcus Chen, Human Colonial Defense Force, currently stationed at Outpost Kepler. 7. I am transmitting under emergency protocols. We have discovered evidence of a conspiracy to suppress human involvement in the Void War. If you receive this message and we fail to check in within 72 hours, assume we have been eliminated and take appropriate action. He closed the transmission and looked at Dr. Brad Vasquez, who was watching him with a mixture of fear and determination. Doctor, I think it's time you showed me everything your team has discovered. All of it, because I have a feeling we're about to find out just how far the Galactic Council is willing to go to keep their secrets. The docking clamps engaged with a vibration that Marcus felt through the deck plating. The arbitrator had arrived, and with it, the first test of whether humanity's true history would remain buried among the stars or finally be brought into the light. The first thing Marcus noticed about the Galactic Council inspection team was that they weren't wearing standard council uniforms. The six figures who emerged from the arbitrator's airlock were dressed in matte black combat gear with no visible identification markings. Their weapons were definitely not standard council issue either, sleek energy rifles that Marcus didn't recognize from any manufacturer's catalog. The leader of the group was a tall Zephyrian whose crystalline features reflected the station's lights in unsettling patterns. When he spoke, his voice carried the harmonic undertones that all members of his species used for emotional emphasis, but the effect was somehow wrong. Instead of the usual musical quality, there was something discordant about it that set Marcus's teeth on edge. I am Inspector Veltar. We are here to conduct a security review of this facility under emergency protocols. All personnel will remain in their current locations until this review is complete. Marcus watched the inspection team spread out through the station's main corridor with the practiced efficiency of soldiers rather than administrators. These weren't bureaucrats conducting a routine review. They were a strike team, and they had come here with a specific purpose. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, her academic training overriding her survival instincts. Inspector, with respect, we weren't informed of any scheduled inspections. Our research permits are all in order, and we've been in full compliance with all council regulations. Veltar's crystalline head swiveled toward her with mechanical precision. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Project Coordinator. Your compliance status is currently under investigation. You will provide immediate access to all research data and findings. Of course, but I must insist on seeing proper authorization. The materials we're working with are quite sensitive from an archaeological standpoint, and we have protocols to follow.
Marcus saw Veltar's hand move toward this weapon and decided it was time to intervene.
Inspector, I'm Sergeant Chen, Station Security. Perhaps we could discuss this in a more private setting? I'd be happy to escort you to our administrative offices. The Zephyrian's attention shifted to Marcus, and for a moment the two of them studied each other in silence. Marcus had faced alien soldiers before, but there was something different about Veltar. Something that suggested he had experience dealing with humans in ways that most council officials never did. Sergeant Chen, your military record indicates 15 years of service in various Outer Rim assignments. Tell me, have you encountered any unusual materials or information during your time at this facility? The question was asked in a casual tone, but Marcus could hear the threat underneath it. This wasn't a request for information. It was a test to see if he would cooperate, or if he would need to be eliminated, along with whatever evidence the team had come to destroy. Nothing beyond standard archaeological findings, sir. The research team has been very professional in their work. Veltar nodded slowly, but Marcus could see that the Zephyrian didn't believe him. I see. In that case, you will escort my team to your main data storage facilities. We require immediate access for our review. Marcus felt his heart rate increase as he realized the true scope of what they were facing. The council team wasn't here to suppress the archive discoveries. They were here to eliminate everyone who had seen them. The inspection was just a cover story to get them inside the station without raising alarms. Of course, Inspector. Right this way. As they walked through the station's corridors, Marcus caught glimpses of the inspection team's other members taking positions at key intersections and access points. They were securing the station for a lockdown no one would be leaving alive. Marcus activated his wrist communicator using the emergency channel that Dr. Vasquez's team used for coordinating their research activities. To any casual observer, it would look like he was checking the time or adjusting the device's settings. But he was actually transmitting a coded message that he hoped the research team would understand. Code 7. Implementation immediate. All personnel to secure stations. Code 7 was a military designation for personnel evacuation under hostile fire. He could only hope that Dr. Vasquez and her team would understand the urgency and take appropriate action. They reached the archive chamber, and Marcus was relieved to see that Dr. Vasquez had apparently received his message. The chamber appeared empty with no sign of the research team that had been working there earlier. The storage banks were still active, but someone had clearly been working to copy data from them. Veltar moved immediately to the nearest active storage unit, his crystalline fingers dancing over controls that Marcus hadn't even realized were accessible. Interesting. These systems are far more advanced than your reports indicated. The encryption protocols alone suggest technology that is several centuries ahead of current human capabilities. As I mentioned in my preliminary reports, Dr. Walt's death. Vasquez's voice came from the chamber's communication system. We believe this station predates human occupation by a significant margin. The original builders were clearly much more advanced than we initially realized. Marcus noticed that Dr. Vasquez was speaking from a remote location, which meant she had managed to evacuate the research team to some kind of secure area. That was good, but it wouldn't keep them safe for long if Veltar's team was as professional as they appeared to be. Dr. Vasquez, Veltar said, still working with the storage systems. Your preliminary reports were incomplete. These systems contain classified materials related to Council security operations. You and your team have accessed information that exceeds your authorization level. Inspector, if we've accidentally accessed classified materials, I'm sure we can resolve this through proper channels. There's no need for any extreme measures. Veltar paused in his work and turned to face Marcus directly. Sergeant Chen, you have extensive combat experience. In your professional opinion, what would be the most efficient way to ensure that classified information discovered at a remote facility does not compromise ongoing Council operations? Marcus felt the weight of the question settle around him like a trap closing. Veltar wasn't asking for his opinion. He was testing to see if Marcus would voluntarily participate in the elimination of the research team. If he refused, he would be classified as hostile and dealt with accordingly. Inspector, in my experience, the best approach to handling classified information is to follow established protocols for reclassification and controlled access. Extreme measures tend to create more problems than they solve. Veltar's crystalline features shifted in what Marcus recognized as the Zephyrian equivalent of a smile. It wasn't a pleasant expression. An interesting perspective, Sergeant. Unfortunately, the materials discovered here fall under protocols that supersede standard reclassification procedures. One of Veltar's team members approached and spoke in rapid Zephyrian. Marcus couldn't understand the language, but the tone suggested urgency. Veltar responded with a series of harmonic tones that sounded like commands. Sergeant Chen, my team has located the research staff. They have barricaded themselves in what appears to be a secure laboratory. You will assist us in gaining access to this facility. Marcus knew that he had reached the point where cooperation would make him complicit in mass murder. Inspector, I'm afraid I can't do that. If your team has legal authority to access the laboratory, they should be able to present proper warrants to Dr. Epatites Vasquez directly. Sergeant, you are interfering with a council security operation. This is your final opportunity to comply voluntarily. Marcus looked around the archive chamber, noting the positions of Veltar's team members and calculating his odds of survival if the situation turned violent. They weren't good. 6 trained soldiers with advanced weapons against 1 human with a standard sidearm. But sometimes impossible odds were all you had to work with. Inspector, I'm going to need to see those authorization documents before I can assist you further. Veltar's weapon was in his hands faster than Marcus would have thought possible. The energy rifle was aimed directly at Marcus's chest, and he could see the charge indicator showing that it was ready to fire. Sergeant Chen, you are now classified as hostile to Council security operations. Marcus was already moving when Veltar pulled the trigger. 15 years of combat experience had taught him that when someone pointed a weapon at you, the time for talking was over. He dove behind one of the massive storage banks as the energy beam seared through the air where he had been standing. The storage bank's armored surface absorbed the energy blast without visible damage, which told Marcus something important about the technology that had built this station. Whatever materials the ancient builders had used were far more advanced than anything in current galactic civilization. Marcus activated his personal communicator again, this time broadcasting on all emergency frequencies.
This is Sergeant Chen at Outpost Kepler.
7. We are under attack by a council strike team. Repeat, we are under attack. The archive discoveries are real, and the council is willing to kill to suppress them. Energy blasts began hitting the storage bank from multiple directions as Veltar's team spread out to surround Marcus's position. He drew his sidearm and began returning fire, but he knew it was only a matter of time before they flanked him. Dr. Vasquez, he called over the communicator, I need you to activate whatever defenses this station has. The inspection team is here to eliminate all witnesses. Sergeant, we've been trying to access the station's defensive systems, but they require authorization codes that we don't have. Marcus ducked as another energy blast carved a glowing trench in the storage bank's surface just above his head. The weapons Veltar's team was using were definitely military grade, designed to punch through heavy armor. His position wouldn't protect him much longer. Doctor, try using human military authorization codes from the archives. This station was built by humans, so there might be protocols that will respond to current human command structures. The energy fire suddenly intensified as 2 more team members flanked his position. Marcus was forced to abandon the storage bank and sprint for the chamber's exit. Energy blasts followed him, carving molten channels in the walls and filling the air with the ozone smell of superheated metal. He made it to the corridor outside the archive chamber, but he could hear Veltar's team pursuing him. They were moving with the methodical precision of soldiers who had done this kind of operation many times before. Marcus realized that this probably wasn't the first research team they had eliminated. The station's emergency lighting activated, bathing the corridors in a red glow that made everything look like a scene from a nightmare. Then, to Marcus's amazement, a synthetic voice began speaking over the station's communication system. The voice was clearly artificial, but it had subtle characteristics that suggested it was of human origin. Warning. Unauthorized hostile forces detected. Initiating Garrison defense protocols. All civilian personnel report to secure areas immediately. Marcus felt a surge of hope as he realized what Dr. Vasquez and her team had accomplished. They had somehow activated the station's original defense systems. If those systems were as advanced as everything else the ancient builders had left behind, Veltar's team was about to face a much more difficult challenge. Heavy blast doors began closing throughout the station, sealing off sections and creating defensive choke points. Marcus heard Veltar shouting orders in Zephyrian as his team found their escape routes being systematically cut off. Hostile forces will vacate this installation immediately or face neutralization under Garrison Defense Protocol 7. Marcus recognized the protocol designation. It was an ancient human military code that authorized lethal force in defense of classified installations. Whoever had built this station had apparently incorporated human military doctrine into its defensive systems. The lights in the corridor suddenly shifted from red emergency lighting to a brilliant white that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Marcus could hear mechanical sounds from throughout the station as systems that had been dormant for 2 millennia came back to life. Sergeant Chen. Doctor. Vasquez's voice came over his communicator. We've established contact with the station's central intelligence. It's been waiting for human authorization codes for over 2,000 years. The garrison that was stationed here during the Void War left detailed instructions for what to do if their secrets were ever discovered. Marcus flattened himself against the corridor wall as he heard the sound of energy weapons fire from several directions. Velta's team was engaging targets that he couldn't see, which meant the station's defenses were active and functional. Doctor, what kind of instructions? Complete data download to all human military installations in the sector. The garrison commander left orders that if the council ever tried to suppress the truth about human involvement in the Void War, the full archives would be transmitted automatically. Marcus felt a grim satisfaction as he realized what was happening. The ancient human garrison hadn't just hidden their records. They had created a dead man's switch that would expose the truth if anyone tried to silence it permanently. Velta's attack had triggered exactly the response they had been trying to prevent. The energy weapons fire was getting closer, but it was interspersed with sounds that Marcus didn't recognize. Mechanical whirring, followed by brief bursts of incredibly intense energy discharge. The station's defensive systems weren't just active, they were engaging the intruders with lethal force. Marcus began making his way toward the laboratory where Dr. Vasquez and her team had taken shelter. The corridors were a maze of closing blast doors and activated defensive systems, but the station's intelligence seemed to be guiding him through safe passages. Sergeant Chen. The synthetic voice spoke directly to him through his communicator. I am Garrison Command Intelligence. I have been monitoring your actions since you arrived at this facility. Your protection of the archaeological team is consistent with the standing orders left by Garrison Commander Sarah Mitchell. Garrison Command, what's the status of the hostile team?
4 hostiles have been neutralized.
2 remaining hostiles are attempting to reach their vessel. Recommendation: prevent their departure to avoid compromising the data transmission operation. Marcus found himself in a position he had never expected to be in. He was receiving tactical support from a 2,000-year-old human military intelligence that was more advanced than anything in current galactic civilization. The archive discoveries weren't just historical curiosities. They were evidence of human technological capabilities that had been deliberately suppressed. He reached the laboratory where Dr. Vasquez and her team were sheltered. The blast doors recognized his biological signature and opened to admit him. Inside, he found the research team working frantically at computer terminals, their faces illuminated by the glow of data streams flowing across multiple screens. Sergeant! Dr. Vasquez looked up from her terminal with relief. The data transmission is almost complete. Every major human installation in this sector will have full copies of the archives within the next hour. Marcus nodded, but his attention was focused on the tactical display that Garrison Command had activated on one of the laboratory screens. It showed the station's layout with the positions of all personnel clearly marked. 2 red indicators were moving rapidly toward the docking bay where the arbitrator was berthed. Dr. Vasquez, we can't let those 2 escape. If they report back to their superiors, the Council will send a full battle fleet to destroy this station and everyone on it. Sergeant Chen, Garrison Command's voice filled the laboratory. The station's defensive capabilities include options for preventing unauthorized departures. However, implementation requires command authorization from human military personnel. Marcus understood what the intelligence was asking. It had the capability to stop Beltar and his remaining team member, but it needed a human officer to authorize the use of lethal force against a Galactic Council vessel. Garrison Command, as senior human military personnel present, I authorize the use of all necessary force to prevent hostile departure from this facility. Implementing departure prevention protocols. The tactical display showed Marcus what happened next. The arbitrator's engines began their startup sequence, but before the vessel could disengage from the docking clamps, the station's defensive systems activated. Energy beams more powerful than anything Marcus had ever seen lanced out from concealed weapon positions, striking the Council vessel with surgical precision. The arbitrator's engines died immediately, and multiple hull breaches appeared on the display. The ship wasn't destroyed, but it was completely disabled. Anyone aboard would have only minutes to reach emergency shelters before the vessel's life support failed completely. Hostile vessel neutralized. 2 hostile personnel eliminated during attempted departure. Threat level reduced to 0. Marcus felt a mixture of satisfaction and unease as he realized what had just happened. They had won this particular battle, but in doing so, they had declared war on the Galactic Council. The data transmission to human installations throughout the sector would ensure that the truth about humanity's role in the Void War could never be completely suppressed again. But it would also make every human in the galaxy a target for Council retaliation. The ancient Garrison's secrets were finally coming to light, but the price of that revelation was going to be measured in blood. Dr. Paul Vasquez was monitoring the data transmission progress on her terminal. Sergeant, the archives contain more than just historical records. There are weapon designs, starship blueprints, and tactical doctrines that are centuries ahead of anything humans currently possess. If these technologies could be reproduced... Marcus nodded grimly. The implications were staggering. Humanity had apparently possessed advanced military technology during the Void War that made their current equipment look primitive by comparison. The question was what had happened to that technology and why humans had been reduced to their current status as a minor galactic power. Doctor, what else do the archives say about the end of the Void War? Doctor, Vasquez consulted her datapad, scrolling through information that was still being processed from the ancient files. According to the Garrison's records, the human forces didn't just participate in the final offensive against the Void entities, they led it. The elder races were apparently losing the war until human military commanders developed new strategies and technologies specifically designed to counter the Void threat. And after the war, that's where the records become disturbing. The human garrison was ordered to stand down and submit to council oversight. Their advanced technologies were to be transferred to council control for safeguarding. The garrison commander, Sarah Mitchell, refused the order and declared the installation autonomous under emergency military protocols. Marcus felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. So this station isn't just a research outpost. It's the last remnant of a human military force that refused to surrender their independence to the Galactic Council. More than that, Sergeant. According to these files, there were dozens of similar installations throughout the galaxy. This may be the only one that survived the Council's cleanup operations. The weight of that revelation settled over Marcus like a physical force. The Galactic Council hadn't just suppressed the truth about human involvement in the Void War. They had systematically eliminated the evidence, including the military installations and personnel who had made victory possible. Humanity's current status as a minor species wasn't the result of natural development. It was the result of a deliberate campaign to reduce human civilization to a level where it could never again challenge Council authority. The ancient Garrison at Kepler 7 represented the last vestige of what humans had once been capable of achieving. The data transmission completed with a soft chime from the computer terminal. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her screen with a mixture of triumph and apprehension. It's done, Sergeant. Every major human installation in 3 sectors now has complete copies of the archived data. Marcus nodded, knowing that they had just changed the course of galactic history. The truth about humanity's past was now beyond the Council's ability to suppress. That truth was going to demand a reckoning that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Garrison Command, he said aloud. What are your recommendations for our next course of action? Sergeant Chen, the Garrison standing orders are clear. In the event that Council suppression protocols are discovered, all remaining human military assets are to be activated for the defense of human independence. The war that began 2,000 years ago is not yet over. The response to the archived data transmission exceeded even Marcus's worst expectations. Within 6 hours of the files reaching human installations throughout the sector, emergency broadcasts began flooding the communication networks. 3 human colony worlds had declared independence from Council oversight. 4 Colonial Defense Force battle groups had gone dark, their commanders refusing all Council communication attempts. And most significantly, the Human Colonial Assembly had called an emergency session to address what their preliminary statement described as revelations of galactic significance. Marcus stood in what had once been the station's command center, now fully operational for the first time in 2 millennia. The displays around him showed a 3-dimensional map of human space with status indicators that painted a picture of controlled chaos. Every human military installation was scrambling to implement emergency protocols as the implications of the archive discoveries spread throughout their command structures. Sergeant, Dr. Vasquez approached him with yet another datapad filled with decoded archive materials. We've found something that changes everything. The Garrison's final battle reports include detailed tactical analyses of the Void entities. According to these files, the Void War never actually ended. Marcus turned from the tactical display to focus his full attention on what she was saying. What do you mean it never ended? The human Garrison didn't destroy the Void entities. They found a way to contain them in a dimensional prison of some kind. But the containment was always intended to be temporary. According to Commander Mitchell's final logs, the prison required regular maintenance using human-specific technologies to remain stable. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. Doctor, when was the last maintenance cycle supposed to occur? Dr. Vasquez consulted her datapad with trembling fingers. 18 months ago, Sergeant. And according to the Garrison's monitoring systems, The containment has been steadily degrading ever since the Council eliminated the last human installation with the necessary technology. Marcus felt the universe shift around him as he understood the true scope of what they were facing. The Galactic Council hadn't just suppressed humanity's role in the Void War. Their systematic elimination of human military capabilities had weakened the very barriers that kept the Void entities imprisoned. The galaxy was facing a threat that made the Council's political machinations seem trivial by comparison. "Garrison Command," Marcus called out to the station's intelligence. "What's the current status of the Void containment?" The synthetic voice that responded carried subtle stress indicators that suggested even an artificial intelligence could experience something analogous to concern. "Containment stability is at 37% and declining. At current degradation rates, total containment failure will occur within 96 hours. Question. Dr. Vasquez dropped her data pad, and Marcus heard the impact echo through the command center like a gunshot. Around them, the research team members who had been working to decode additional archive materials stopped their activities and turned to stare at the command displays with expressions of growing horror. Garrison Command, what happens when the containment fails completely? Based on historical combat data, Void entities will resume their expansion into normal spacetime. All sentient life within a radius of approximately 50 light-years will be consumed within 72 hours of initial breach. Expansion will continue at an accelerating rate until all available organic material in the galaxy has been processed. The command center fell silent except for the soft humming of computer systems. Marcus looked around at the faces of the research team and saw his own feelings reflected back at him. They had uncovered the truth about humanity's hidden history, but that truth came with a responsibility that seemed impossible to bear. "Doctor," Marcus said quietly, "do the archives contain information about how the containment maintenance was supposed to be performed?" Vasquez retrieved her datapad and began scrolling through the decoded files. "Yes, but Sergeant, the maintenance requires a human military vessel, equipped with what the archives call a void interface drive. According to these specifications, the technology is unlike anything in current human engineering databases." Marcus moved to one of the command displays and began accessing the station's sensor networks. If they were going to have any chance of preventing a galactic catastrophe, they needed to understand exactly what resources were available to them. "Garrison Command, does this station have the capability to construct void interface drives? However, this station contains complete manufacturing specifications for vessels equipped with such drives. Construction would require raw materials and manufacturing capabilities not currently available at this facility." "What about other Garrison installations? The archives mentioned dozens of similar facilities." "All other confirmed Garrison installations were destroyed by Council forces between 1847 and 1952 years ago. However, probability analysis suggests that additional facilities may exist in classified or unknown locations." Marcus felt a cold certainty settling over him as he realized what needed to happen next. The archive data transmission had already triggered a galaxy-wide crisis as human installations began to understand their true heritage. But if they were going to prevent the return of the void entities, they needed to move far beyond simply revealing the truth. "Dr. Vasquez, I need you to transmit the void interface drive specifications to every human shipyard and manufacturing facility in the sector. Include all the technical data about the containment system and its current status." "Sergeant, transmitting those specifications will essentially be declaring that humans possess military technology that's centuries ahead of anything the Council has ever seen. It will be viewed as an act of war." "Doctor, in 96 hours, there won't be a galactic council for us to be at war with. There won't be anything but void entities consuming everything in their path." Dr. Vasquez nodded grimly and began preparing the transmission. Around the command center, her research team worked with desperate efficiency to compile all the relevant technical data from the archives. Marcus could see the weight of galactic survival settling on their shoulders as they came to terms with the magnitude of their responsibility. The communication system activated with an incoming transmission that carried the priority codes of the human colonial assembly. Marcus accepted the call, and the holographic projection of Assembly Chancellor Rebecca Torres materialized in the center of the command center. "Sergeant Chen, I'm Chancellor Torres. The Assembly has been reviewing the archive materials that your team transmitted, and we need immediate clarification on several critical points." "Chancellor, the most critical point is that we have less than 4 days to prevent the return of the void entities. Everything else is secondary to that objective." Chancellor Torres's expression shifted from political concern to genuine alarm. Sergeant, you're telling me that the threat described in the historical records is still active? Yes, ma'am. The containment system has been failing since the Council eliminated the last human installation capable of maintaining it. We need to begin immediate construction of vessels equipped with void interface drives, or the entire galaxy is going to be consumed. The Chancellor was silent for several moments as she processed the implications. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of someone making decisions that would affect billions of lives. Sergeant, the Assembly is prepared to authorize emergency military mobilization, but we need technical specifications for the required vessels. Dr. Vasquez is transmitting those specifications now, Chancellor. But I need to warn you that constructing these vessels is going to require revealing human technological capabilities that the Council has spent 2 millennia trying to suppress. They're going to view this as a declaration of war. Sergeant, if the alternative is galactic extinction, then we'll deal with the Council's reaction as a secondary concern. I'm issuing immediate orders for full military mobilization under the emergency protocols outlined in the archive materials. Marcus felt a surge of pride as he realized that humanity was finally reclaiming its true heritage. The ancient Garrison's sacrifice was being honored by their descendants' willingness to take responsibility for the galaxy's survival, regardless of the political consequences. Chancellor, there's something else you need to know. According to the archives, humans didn't just participate in the Void War. We developed technologies and strategies that were crucial to containing the threat. The current human military might be capable of more than we've ever imagined. Explain, Sergeant. The archives suggest that human cognitive patterns and biological characteristics made us uniquely suited to interfacing with the technologies required to fight void entities. The other galactic species were apparently unable to operate the most effective anti-void weapon systems. Chancellor Torres leaned forward in her holographic projection, her political instincts clearly recognizing the implications. Are you telling me that humans are the only species capable of maintaining the void containment?
Yes, ma'am. And that's probably why the Council worked so hard to reduce our technological capabilities.
They needed us weak enough to control, but they didn't realize that weakening us would eventually compromise the containment system. The Chancellor's expression hardened with determination. Sergeant, you have full Assembly authorization for whatever actions are necessary to address the void threat. The technical specifications you're transmitting will be implemented immediately at every human shipyard in the galaxy. The transmission ended, leaving Marcus and the research team alone in the command center with the weight of galactic survival on their shoulders. Around them, the displays showed human installations throughout the sector beginning to implement the emergency protocols contained in the archive materials. Garrison Command, Marcus said. What are the odds that human forces will be able to construct and deploy the necessary vessels within the available time frame? Based on current human manufacturing capabilities and the technical specifications provided, probability of successful deployment is approximately 63%. However, this analysis assumes full cooperation between all human military and civilian installations. Marcus nodded, knowing that those odds were better than he had any right to expect. But 63% still meant a significant chance that the galaxy would be consumed by entities that humanity had fought to contain 2,000 years ago. Doctor, he called to Dr. Baum. Vasquez, is there anything else in the archives that might improve our chances? Dr. Vasquez had been working continuously to decode the Garrison's final records, and her eyes were red with exhaustion. But when she looked up from her datapad, Marcus could see excitement mixed with her fatigue. Sergeant, I think I found something important. Commander Mitchell's final log entries describe a backup plan that was implemented if the containment ever failed completely. What kind of backup plan? According to these records, the Garrison installed what they called awakening protocols in human genetic material. Apparently, exposure to void entities triggers certain dormant capabilities in human biology that were specifically engineered to counter void influence. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine as he understood what she was saying. Doctor, are you telling me that humans were genetically modified to fight the void entities? More than modified, Sergeant. According to these files, humans were created specifically for that purpose. We're not just another galactic species that happen to be good at fighting void entities. We're a weapon system designed by an ancient civilization to prevent the void from consuming the galaxy. The weight of that revelation settled over Marcus like a physical presence. Humanity's entire existence was the result of an ancient war against forces that could consume reality itself. The archaeological discoveries at Kepler, 7, weren't just revealing hidden history, they were awakening humanity to its true purpose. Garrison Command, Are the awakening protocols still functional in current human populations? Affirmative. However, activation requires direct exposure to void entity emanations. The protocols were designed to trigger automatically if the containment system ever failed completely. Marcus understood the terrible logic of the ancient plan. If the technological containment failed, humanity itself would become a biological weapon against the void. But that transformation would only occur if humans were directly threatened by the entities they had been created to fight. The communication system activated again, this time with incoming reports from human installations throughout the sector. The emergency construction protocols were being implemented with desperate efficiency, but initial reports suggested that the most advanced shipyards might be able to produce functional void interface vessels within 72 hours at the earliest. Sergeant Chen, came a transmission from Admiral Sarah Kim of the Colonial Defense Force. We're implementing the archive specifications, but our technical teams are reporting that some of the required components are beyond current human manufacturing capabilities. We may need to improvise alternatives. Marcus looked around the command center, noting the advanced technology that surrounded them. The ancient Garrison had built this installation with capabilities that were still beyond anything in current galactic civilization. But they had also designed it to be operated by humans who understood its true purpose. Admiral, stand by for additional technical data. This station contains manufacturing capabilities that might be able to produce the required components. Garrison Command, can this facility manufacture void interface drive components? Affirmative. However, full vessel construction would require approximately 140 hours with current resource allocation. Individual drive components can be manufactured in 36 hours. Marcus made a decision that he knew would change the course of his life forever. Garrison Command, begin immediate manufacturing of void interface drive components for transmission to human shipyards. Dr. Vasquez, I need you to coordinate with Admiral Kim's technical teams to ensure compatibility with current human vessel designs. As the station's manufacturing systems came to life for the first time in 2 millennia, Marcus realized that they were witnessing the rebirth of human civilization, as it was always meant to be. The ancient Garrison sacrifice was finally bearing fruit, as their descendants embraced the responsibility that came with their true heritage. The next 72 hours would determine whether humanity could fulfill its purpose as the galaxy's defenders against the void, or whether the ancient war would finally be lost to the forces of consumption and chaos. But for the first time since arriving at Kepler, 7, Marcus felt genuine hope. Humanity had been created as a weapon against the darkness between stars. It was time to remember how to fight.